Hi friend, my name is Jenny and I'm back today to do another video. I believe this will be the last of my 3 vlogs that I'm making during the month of May, but all 3 of them are kind of overlapping slightly, and all 3 of them I have added a clip or started today, Sunday, May 9th, but today I'm not feeling my best. So I have kind of a congestion situation going on. I was quite sick yesterday, which I talked a bit about in my Springathon vlog, which I'll put a link to up in the cards above, but I am not feeling my best, so sorry for the kind of weird voice situation that you're getting at the beginning of this video. But I wanted to start off this month's arc vlog, as I have started the first of the 3 arcs that I'll be reading, and wanted to kind of chat to you about my first impressions of that one, and also just introduce the other 2 books that I'll be hoping to read during this vlog as well. So if you missed last month, I started a new series on my channel which is called The Reader of the Last Arc, wherein I read a few arcs that are related to one another in some way and kind of discuss them in depth in a vlog style video. So this is gonna be the second of those videos, the first of which was April nonfiction books, which I'll put a link to up at the cards above as well, and this will be feminist literary fiction books. So I'm reading 3 books written by women that in some way involve, I think, kind of feminist themes, or at least that's what I've gotten from the blurb. Obviously I haven't read the books yet, so I don't know how feminist they actually are, but they all kind of seem to be interacting with issues that are relevant specifically to kind of women and misogyny and sexism, etc. So the first of those, and the one that I've already started, is Revival Season by Monica West. All 3 of these books I talked a little bit about in my May TBR, so I'll put a link to that up in the cards above as well. But this is Monica West's debut novel, wherein we follow our teenage protagonist Miriam, who is 15 years old and the daughter of an evangelical preacher in the Deep South. I believe her family is from Texas, but they move through the rest of the South every summer to host these kind of revival events. So they are, as an evangelical preacher, he is attempting to kind of convert other people to evangelicalism, particularly in Black communities in rural parts of the South. So we're following this family after the previous summer something happened with a young girl who the father was kind of involved with in some way. We've alluded to that a little bit in this first chapter that I've read, but I don't know that much about it, and I think that'll be part of the mystery of kind of uncovering that during this novel. But we also are following Miriam, who's starting to develop some complicated feelings around her father, I think in lieu of what happened last summer. So I think this book is going to be a lot about her kind of journey through her ideas of faith and what it means to be a woman and what she believes is kind of right and wrong. So I'm super excited about this one. Miriam also has 2 siblings, and her youngest sister, Hannah, who's only 8 years old, appears to have cerebral palsy, as that was kind of alluded to also in this first chapter. And that is kind of interesting because the father appears to believe that that is some fault of the mother's for not kind of having enough faith in God, and so therefore their child has cerebral palsy. So I thought that was really interesting as well. So I'm just very intrigued about discussions surrounding faith and morality and the kind of intersection but also divergence of those 2 things. The second one I'll be reading is Bewilderness by Karen Tucker. This is another, I believe, debut novel that follows 2 teenage girls living in rural North Carolina. So again, another book set in the South, which is obviously something I'm pretty interested in, and this follows the 2 of them as they both get addicted to drugs in their community. And I believe one of the girls ends up meeting another young man who's attempting to help her get clean, and I think it's about their kind of relationship as it changes, both because of their drug addiction but also because one of them is attempting to become sober. So that, I think, is the main crux of that one. So it touches a lot on like female friendship and potentially like toxicity in female friendships and those types of themes, which are all things I'm interested in. So that is the next one I'll be reading. And then the final one I'm reading is Animal by Lisa Taddeo, which I've been seeing a fair amount about here on BookTube, just because I think this is getting some pretty hard kind of marketing buzz. So I've seen this arc kind of on a few other people's channels, but this is Lisa Taddeo's debut novel in fiction. She wrote 3 Women, which is a nonfiction book that I think she published in 2019. It doesn't say, but I believe she published it in 2019. I read it in 2020, I think, and I read it after I started my channel. So I'll put a link to where I talked about it in some previous video up in the cards above. But this is her debut novel that's about a young woman who I believe witnesses a horrific act at some point, either in her childhood or early adulthood, and from that act is then seeking revenge on people who have wronged her or people who have wronged other women, I believe primarily men. I've heard this one is very intense and dark, and so perhaps difficult to get through, but also really engaging and good. So I'm not entirely sure how I will feel about this one, but I am super excited about it. I did really enjoy Storygraph quite a lot, so I have high hopes for this one as well. So yeah, those are the 3 books that I'll be reading in this vlog. I'll definitely keep you updated as I continue through revival season. I also might be starting Animal soon, depending on how my springathon reading is going. So it is Thursday, May 13th, and I thought I would check in for revival season, which I'm about a quarter of the way through now, and I have to say I'm kind of bored. I want something to happen because while we have been kind of introduced to the premise, which is that Miriam, our main character, who's 15, her father last year during one of his revivals prior to the summer that this novel takes place, he actually attacked a pregnant girl at one of the revival seasons because she was a teenager, she was unmarried, and for many churches that is a problem. So he attacked her, and that was bad, and so they're kind of dealing with the repercussions of that, and many people are kind of hesitant to go to the revivals, etc. And so Miriam's kind of developing these more complicated feelings surrounding her father. And we've also just had, during this summer, another interaction where her father has attacked another person, but this one was very private, and so he's trying to keep it hidden, but Miriam knows what actually happened. So that's kind of the premise of the novel, and I think Miriam's gonna continue to develop more complicated feelings surrounding her father and realizing who her father really is versus who he purports himself to be, which I think is gonna be interesting, but I'm just not that engaged with it. I think part of the reason is that the novel, so Miriam is 15, and it really reads like she's 15, it almost reads like a YA novel, which it's not. It's an adult literary fiction novel, but the language is very kind of simplistic. The writing style is very kind of matter of fact, which doesn't necessarily bother me, but at the same time, I'm kind of wanting a bit more from the writing that I'm getting. Miriam's younger sister, Hannah, also has cerebral palsy, and so there's kind of an exploration of disability and her kind of father's views, and also some interesting things happening in terms of her mother and pregnancy, because her mother lost a child 2 years ago. It was a stillborn child, and then her mother now is pregnant again, and her mother, Miriam, remembers 2 years ago saying I do not want to have another child. This will be my last child. I don't want to have any more children. And so there's some interesting kind of ideas about control and the relationship between faith and control, and evangelicalism and control, that I'm finding interesting. I just kind of wish more was happening. So those are kind of my thoughts right now. I'm hoping to dig into it more this weekend, potentially even finish it if I have the time. I don't have that much else going on this weekend, but I am still feeling kind of sick, so I don't know how active I will be and how much of a reading mood I'll be in. But yeah, I'll keep you updated for sure in terms of if anything kind of changes in my perspective, but right now I'm not loving it, which is sad because I was really looking forward to this one. Hi everyone, so it is Saturday, May 15th, and I've just finished revival season earlier today, so I thought I would check in with my final thoughts on it. And unfortunately, I was kind of let down by this book. I only ended up giving it 3 stars. I think it's a fine read, but I think my expectations were set a little high. I was really anticipating this book, and it just it wasn't really what I was expecting, nor did it kind of meet the high expectations that I'd set for it. So I think my biggest issue with this novel is that the novel very much feels like it's from Miriam, who is our 15-year-old protagonist's perspective, in that the voice of the narrator and the kind of writing style really is reminiscent of a 15-year-old who has grown up in a very insular and abusive family and community, and so she feels very naive at times, but I think at the same time that also means the writing style sometimes lacks depth or feels overly simplistic. I feel like this book could have benefited a lot from having Miriam kind of looking back on this point in her life, this turning point in her life as a kind of older narrator, which sometimes I do take issue with that in books because it feels unnecessary, but I feel like with this book it maybe would have made a bit more sense, because I think Miriam could have added more perspective and nuance on what was happening, which it was kind of difficult for her to do when she was right in the midst of the kind of unraveling of her family and the exposure of her father as this very abusive person who is using evangelicalism as a form of control and abuse of power. I feel like that kind of discussion is really best reflected upon much later in your life after you've already left that abusive situation. So I was kind of frustrated that the book stayed totally in 15-year-old Miriam's head, as I think it really would have benefited from that kind of later perspective in life. I also kind of rolled my eyes a little bit, or just questioned how big the idea of miracles and healing played in this book. Miriam throughout the book is actually able to heal people of their ailments, and given that that's just not something that I think of as being based in reality, I was kind of confused because it didn't really feel like a magical realism element of it. Obviously for people that are in evangelical communities, particularly ones that are focused on spiritual healing as opposed to medical treatment with medical doctors, like spiritual healing does feel like a very real thing. But as someone outside of that, I kind of questioned why it was such a central tenet of the book and why it was so successful in the book, because I think there was a point to be made of her father not actually being able to heal people, but then on the flip side, Miriam was actually able to heal people, which I don't want to give too much away because there are some kind of spoilers associated with that. But I just kind of was questioning the way that that was dealt with as someone who's not at all part of an evangelical community, or who doesn't even like believe that spiritual healing is something that can heal you completely on its own, and to the extent that people are healed in this book. I think the book is engaging and it definitely kind of grapples with some interesting topics, but overall I was just kind of disappointed by the way it was executed, although on the flip side perhaps it was successfully executed because Miriam did feel very real as a character, but at the same time as a reading experience it wasn't my favorite. Overall I thought it was fine. I think if you were interested in it I'd still like recommend checking it out, but it's definitely not going to be like a new favorite or anything, which I was kind of hoping it would be. So those are my thoughts on revival season. I've not yet started Bewilderness by Karen Tucker, which I think is going to be the next one I read, but I'm planning on starting it in the next couple of days. I'll be sure to update you on my like first impressions once I have started it. So I realized that I've kind of been a bad blogger because I've not updated you at all on Bewilderness by Karen Tucker, which I have actually finished. It is Friday, May 21st, so it's been like about a week since I last updated you. But in my defense, I read Bewilderness over the course of like 2 days while at work, and so I just didn't really have any time or motivation during that time to like give you any updates, nor did I really have that many updates while I was reading it. But obviously now that I finished it, I do want to talk to you about it, and I ended up really enjoying this one quite a lot. I think it's a really strong debut. It's really hard to read, so I don't think this book is going to be for everyone. It's really kind of emotionally devastating in a lot of very subtle ways. In case you're unfamiliar with this book, I can't really remember how much I've said about it, but it's about two best friends who are living in rural North Carolina who get involved in drugs by way of their friendship, and that kind of devolves, and the novel is basically coursing them trying to get clean and the hurdles that they encounter while in that process, and basically just how difficult it is to be in the cycle of addiction, and particularly when you're only surrounded by people who are also in that cycle of addiction. I think the way their friendship was depicted was really beautiful. It also was explored kind of the toxicity of their relationship. The way that they enable one another to continue using drugs was, I thought, depicted in a really accurate way. You could tell that they had a lot of compassion for one another, but also you as the reader who's like outside of their friendship can see how toxic it is and how much our main narrator needs to get away from this person who obviously is not helping her in her journey towards sobriety. So I thought that was a really interesting take on a friendship, and I thought it was done in such a way that I both understood how they were drawn to one another, but also I could see how terrible the relationship was. I also thought the novel was really pacey. It plays a bit with the timeline of events, and so I thought that was really well done and kind of kept me intrigued. It also is very short. It's like less than 300 pages, so it definitely goes by very quickly. And I think there's just a lot of really heart-wrenching things that happen that I think are all too real for a lot of people that are in the cycle of addiction, that I just like was kind of constantly drawn to continue through the story. That being said, you know, trigger warnings for obviously drug use, there's a lot of that. It's not held back whatsoever, and it's not glorified in any way. I mean, these two characters absolutely want to no longer be using drugs, and yet they are finding themselves in a situation where that seems like the only option for them, and they're not getting the help they need, in part because people are taking advantage of them because of their vulnerability, but also just they don't have that many people looking out for them, aside from one person who also is drawn very thin because she's one of the sponsors for like a whole group of people in their rural community. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really well paced, definitely intrigued to see what Karen Tucker does next. I will say, as someone who truly like knows nothing about drugs, some of the terminology here I even was like, I don't really know what you're talking about, but I got enough of a sense to understand what was happening, and like I know enough about drug usage to kind of understand, but it feels very kind of internal to that world, which I also appreciated as someone who's very external to that world. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one, would recommend it to certain audiences. Obviously, if you struggle with drug use or drug addiction or know someone very close to you who does, I don't know if this would be the best book for you, because it does really not shy away at all from the terrible things that can happen from drug addiction. I mean, that's kind of the main things that happened in this book. But if you are not, but that's something that kind of you're interested in reading about, then I definitely would recommend this one quite a lot. And I give it 4 stars. I don't remember if I said that previously. And I've not yet started Animal by Lisa Taddeo, but I'm going to start this one this weekend. So I'll give you some preliminary thoughts, hopefully in the near future. Hi all. Oh my goodness. As soon as I start filming, the cars on the busy street that we live near start revving their engines. Truly classic. Also, another car is leaving the parking lot. It's just crazy here. Okay, so hi all. It's been several days since I last updated this vlog. Honestly, not sure when that was. The cat might appear. Yep, there he is. He's ready to go inside. But honestly, not sure when my last update was. It was probably, I guess, when I finished Bewilderness. It was talking about it, which I think was on Friday. So it's Wednesday now, Wednesday, May 26th. And today was actually my last day of work at my pod/nanny job, which is crazy. It's truly crazy to think that it's been a full year of school since I started this job. Just like so much has happened in the last year, but at the same time it's gone by so fast, which I think just happens as you get older and older, as one of the children's grandmothers was telling me, and I was like, I know me mom, I get the feeling. So I am excited. It's kind of bittersweet, you know. I do love the girls and loved hanging out with them, but also they were getting on my nerves by the end of the year, so I was kind of ready to say au revoir. But actually I jump right into my next gig, which will be a summer camp job, which I've worked before and really enjoyed. It's a great little camp here in Atlanta where you like bike around and do like nature crafts and stuff, and I really enjoy the kids. I feel like it's pretty self-selecting in terms of the type of families that choose the camp, and so usually the kids are pretty chill, which is nice, and it's only a week-long camp, so we get new kids pretty much every week. So that, I have training tomorrow, and then I have a 3-day weekend for Memorial Day. That does not include actual Memorial Day. Working camp starts on Monday, but I have Friday off, but I also have to do CBR training. Anyway, none of this is book related, but since I'm vlogging, I thought I would share it. But also in terms of book related updates, since this is a reading vlog by nature, I did want to talk about Animal by Lisa Taddeo, which I am about 137 pages into, actually, to be precise, and I'm enjoying this quite a lot. I think Lisa Taddeo has a really unique writing style, and I definitely think if you were a fan of 3 Women, which was her debut full-length work, I guess, it was a nonfiction book about 3 women living in different parts of the United States and basically all of their relationships with desire and basically power as it relates to sexuality and sexual assault and kind of men who are bad. And this book is tackling a lot of the same themes, except it's a fiction novel, and it's about a woman who has had something very traumatizing happen to her. Oh wait, my dad's at the store, he's texting me. Okay, we've had some dinner shenanigans and he's at the store getting things that we didn't realize we needed. So I am back now, but I have been really enjoying Animal by Lisa Taddeo. I definitely think that the elements that she discussed in 3 Women are also here in this book, although this book is darker than 3 Women was. Our protagonist is very unreliable. She's not yet informed the reader at this stage, which I'm about close to halfway through the book, what specifically happened to her as a child, but we know it's something very traumatic that has had an impact on how she views relationships, particularly sexual relationships. I do have an inkling of what happened, or I have 2 theories, neither of which I'm going to share in case one of them comes true. This isn't like a thriller by any means, although it's kind of a literary thriller almost, because it's definitely about the characters, kind of similarly to Imposter Syndrome. It's about the characters, but there's definitely a mystery that's continuing to pull you through the narrative, which I'm enjoying. But the narrator has not told us about her childhood, and she also has not told us about her relationship with this other main character named Alice, who obviously is somehow connected to our main narrator, whose name is Joan. But we have no idea that relationship, but it does seem to have something to do with the traumatic events of her childhood. And the novel has been a lot about kind of relationships with men and the ways in which men use a relationship as a power struggle, and the way that vulnerability can transform into an abusive relationship in, I think, really fascinating and interesting ways. So I'm enjoying those elements of this book quite a lot, particularly because I enjoyed them in 3 Women as well. So I think if you weren't a fan of 3 Women, you probably will hate this, just because it's really playing on a lot of the same themes. And additionally, if you liked 3 Women, but wanted to see something different from Lisa Taddeo, this is not going to be the book for you because it's very similar. But I am enjoying it. I am hoping to finish it this weekend during, as I said, my kind of 3-day weekend as I prepare to start camp on Monday. And I think that's everything for now. Here's the boy sitting outside with me. He wanted to go in, but then he realized I wasn't getting up, so he's waiting very patiently. Although he did throw up on my bed this morning. Apparently, I was at work. But he's old, and he eats things he's not supposed to, so such is life. Hi pals, I am currently making myself a grilled cheese, which I'll show you in just a minute. I also just filmed my summer TBR video, which I'll put up in the cards above. But in between eating my lunch and editing my summer TBR video, I think I'm going to try to knock out and finish Animal by Lisa Taddeo. I have about 100 pages left. Things are starting to really go off the walls, so I think this will be pretty quick to finish, especially the last like 5 chapters or so were really short. So I think we're going to have short chapters kind of the rest of the way through as we kind of finish out this book. Definitely intrigued. We'll give you my final thoughts, also show you my grilled cheese, which I think I need to turn over soon. But yeah, I just thought I'd give you a little update on what's happening. Getting a cool breeze. I wonder if it's gonna rain later. But yeah, that's what's up. Here it is flipped over. I'm gonna cook it more, I think, on this side, but I always just like to get it a little crispy on both sides first. The cheese can kind of melt evenly, and then I crisp it up more on each side. Little cooking time with Jenny. Several things have happened since I last checked in. I have rearranged my room. I have taken a nap. I was editing my video, and I have finished Animal by Lisa Taddeo. And I ended up giving this 4-ish stars. I kind of have to think about it a bit more because it was very weird. I'm not quite sure I fully got it or kind of vibed with it as other people will, but I do really like Lisa Taddeo's writing style. I do think if you were a fan of the kind of themes explored in Three Women, which I was, I really enjoyed this as a piece of kind of narrative nonfiction, I think you would like this. And Lisa Taddeo's narration style in Three Women definitely also comes through in her fiction. This felt to me a lot like Idaho by Emily Ruskovich as well, so if you enjoyed that book, I would recommend this one, as I think it is probably, you know, they kind of, while they are touching on different ideas, I feel like for some reason they have very similar vibes to me. It also, it's very unsettling, but not in a way that I found to be kind of overtly so. I mean, it's full of trauma, but similarly to Three Women, I thought it was dealt with in a way that felt fairly realistic, except as we kind of went towards the end and things started going off the rails a bit. I did enjoy reading it, and I definitely am intrigued to see like where Lisa Taddeo goes next. She definitely has some interesting kind of things that she's working through in her fiction and her nonfiction. So yeah, I mean, I think if you are planning to read this because you enjoyed Three Women, I would still definitely recommend it. I think also if the premise sounds interesting to you and you are interested in themes of relationships between men and women and abuse and power and trauma and the intersection of those things, I think you would find this interesting as well. If you are someone who has experienced abuse or trauma in a relationship, don't think this is the book for you. There's just kind of a lot of intense stuff happening here, but otherwise it was pretty solid, I would say. And so that was Animal, and that is actually going to conclude this reading vlog. Do let me know if any of these 2 books are now ones that you're interested in picking up or have plans to pick up. Additionally, if you found this video because you've read any of these 3 books, I'd love to have you talk to me about them down in the comment section below. If you are new to my channel, I'd love to have you stick around and subscribe, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.